Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good evening. I'll wait.
Okay. Join ആയിട്ടില്ല sir. Join ആകുന്നതേ ഉള്ളൂ ആൾക്കാര്. Good evening, Anu.
Good evening, Vijay. How are you? Good evening, sir.
Join ചെയ്യുന്നതേ ഉള്ളൂ കുട്ടികളെ.
കുഴപ്പമില്ല, ഞാൻ I'll stay muted.
Okay, okay.
Anu, good evening.
Good evening, sir. Sugano.
Sugana. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining and motivating the young students.
My pleasure, sir. My pleasure.
Anju sir, can we start? Students എല്ലാവരും join ആയിട്ടുണ്ട്. Anju sir?
Yes, Biji. Yes.
We can start, right? Students എല്ലാവരും join ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട്.
Yeah. Normally നമ്മൾ കുറച്ചുകൂടെ കഴിയുമ്പോഴേ ബാക്കിയുള്ളവർ join ചെയ്യുള്ളൂ, but you can start the proceeding.
Okay. So good evening all. On behalf of CSI Trivandrum chapter, I am pleased to welcome you all to this National Student Tech Talk series. This is the third series we are organizing. Indeed, a great platform for our students to showcase their talent. Today, we have Anupi Ambika as the session chair and 4 young budding enthusiasts who will be sharing their interest. To start with, may I now invite the chairman of the Trivandrum chapter, Dr. Achushankar S. Nair.
Hello, everyone. You want me to speak, Vijay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hello, everyone, especially the young friends who are making their presentations today. We are very glad that Computer Society of India is able to give a platform to young students on alternate weeks. Every Thursday, we hold a talk by very eminent people. And alternate Thursdays, we have now started giving platform for young students. We started with 6 students in 60 minutes. But we found that young people are very enthusiastic and they cannot hold back their enthusiasm. And consequently, their time management wasn't up to the level that we expected. Therefore, now we have reduced it to 4 people. So that even if there is some overrun, we will be able to finish the whole program in an hour's time. That is our idea. This series is named in commemoration of F.C. Kohli, some say is the father of the IT industry in India. He was also the president of Computer Society of India when Trivandrum chapter was established, and he was the one who inaugurated the Trivandrum chapter. So in his memory, and he is the founder of TCS, in his memory we have launched this series. So the chairman of the Student Activities Committee, Dr. BG CL, is taking the effort. I'm very happy to see that she is continuously organizing it now. And I look forward to the words of wisdom of the young students. Friends, young friends, I'm sure if you, when you look back after many years, you may find that these platforms were springboards for you to grow both technically and in terms of your communication skills. So I congratulate all of you, and I hope to see many more young faces and their thoughts in the coming weeks. And I'm very happy that we have a person who can communicate very well and motivate you very well, Anup Ambika from Technopark, to chair this session. I think that is a plum in the pudding for this particular session. So I must especially thank Anup Ambika for sparing time for sitting through the lectures of the young students and also giving the motivating remarks. So over to you, Biji.
Thank you, sir. I'm happy to introduce the session chair for the day, Anupi Ambika, and voracious reader who loves public speaking and debating. He is famous among the student community for his excellence in startup mentoring. To extend his startup mentoring, he used a lot of analogy, mostly from movies. Mithunatile Mohanlal mudala Surarai Pottula Surya vare Anupinda heroes are startup mentoring. He is a serial entrepreneur, organizer, and a technology enthusiast. He is a co-founder of several technology startups, and currently he is the Chief Executive Officer of Lab Research and Genpro Research. He is a graduate in Computer Science and Engineering from TKM College of Engineering, University of Kerala. He is also an MSc graduate from our department, Computational Biology and Bioinformatics of the University of Kerala. He is also a director of World Eco Solution, a great initiative which ventures into a decentralized ways of waste management, an accelerator which promotes a 100-day program to seed and germinate an idea. I wholeheartedly welcome Anupi Ambika. Anup?
Thank you, Biji. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Okay. So I'll call the students one by one. The first on the list is Lydia Thomas, a coding enthusiast currently pursuing her engineering graduation from College of Engineering, Pyramid. She is an active member of CSI student branch at her college. Apart from her academic inclination, she is a professional video editor with a deep passion towards digital designing and drawing. Being a good orator, she is welcoming us to the world of sixth sense technology. Over to you, Lydia.
Thank you, ma'am. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, you're audible, Lydia. Carry on.
Hello everyone, good evening. Vidya Thomas from College of Engineering, Periman. And thank you for giving me an opportunity to share some of my thoughts on the topics, the world of sixth sense technology. So before starting, let me tell how I came to this topic. Back in the days, I recall sitting down with my cousins and friends to watch fiction movies like Interstellar and all such movies, and kept wondering if activities in this real world turn out as real as in those movies. I always had this kind of curiosity on what the current world would look like with such kind of expanses. And recently, I was having a late night conversation with my roommate in hostel, and which eventually ended up on this topic, a world where I wouldn't need a phone and yet I can call or whomever I want, and a world where everything is no more a touch away, but it's just with you. And that's how my journey on discovering this topic started. And before, let me move on to the topic. We all know that we all have five senses, right? And currently our world is
Lydia,
manipulating.
the screen is not shared, Lydia.
Okay, ma'am. Wait 1 minute. Can you see now, ma'am?
Yes, yes, Lydia.
Okay.
You can go to the presentation. Yes.
Okay, that's my topic. And let me tell what does this sixth sense technology mean? It's an integration of the real world and the digital world. Let me explain. Currently, our world is manipulating all our five senses at its maximum potential, right? That 50 years back, all that we are enjoying today was barely even a dream, right? What assurance we can give as to what beholds in the next decade to come, right? Probably things that we have just witnessed only in fictitious films. That's this technology, and it's a correlation of the digital world and the physical world. In simple words, we can say that the way we manipulate the physical world around us today can shall be similarly manipulated just with the help of digital touch in the future. For example, imagine being able to zoom into a place which is 50 meters or some far away from us just by pinching out with our fingers. Or just imagine holding a plain paper and we can play video games or watching news even in a plain paper. Seems amazing, right? That's that's the implementation of this technology. Let me make it more clear that we grew up interacting with many physical objects around us, right? There are enormous number of them that we use. Unlike most of other computing devices, these objects are much more fun to use to us, right? When we talk about these objects, another thing that come along with this is gestures. That is how we manipulate these objects. That is how we use these objects in our everyday life. We use objects not only to interact with other objects, but also to interact among us, right? Interact each other. Like gesture of namaste that we use for all Indians, it is familiar that we use to show respect to someone, like, right? Also, we all might know some gestures like 4 run, 6 run wide, and all such gestures in cricket. It came as a part of our everyday learning into our memory, right? Like that, we can make our system recognize some gestures. So we can command to a system without any coding language or something like that. We can command to our system with some gestures that can be implemented with the help of C++ and C# programming languages also. So that is the sixth sense technology, and it is evaluated from a man named Steve Mann, who is considered as the father of sixth sense technology. And later, this research was carried out by Pranav Mistry, who made the prototype and all such things. So now a question may arise among you that why to choose a sixth sense? Already we have all the five senses, and why to choose a sixth sense? I'll explain. This sixth sense makes it's very common. It's made of very common and available products, right? So we all are humans, and we take decisions from acquiring inputs from all our five senses. So sometimes these five senses are not enough to make a right decision. So we use internet, computer, or mobile phones, and all such things to make a good decision. But these mobiles and all such things are restricted to a single screen, right? There is no direct interaction between the physical world and the digital world. So this sixth sense technology provides us a freedom to interact with the physical world with the help of digital world, with the help of physical gestures, hand gestures and finger movements and all such things. That's how that's the significance of this technology. And let me say, how does this work? The given image is an example, a prototype that is made by Pranav Mystery with the help of simply available objects around us, like pocket projector, mirror, color markers, camera, and all such things. Let me show you how this works. I will show you a video. Can you see this? I hope you can see.
Yeah, we can see, but it is not moving, right? Did you? Yeah. Yes.
So here the person is using some markers in his fingertips, and in front of him there is a wall. In that wall there is a screen, and he is drawing something or he is moving with the help of that markers, colored markers in his fingertips. Actually, these colored markers act as sensors, and with sensors are movements, and a projector is there, which a mirror is also there to project that or something coming from the projector to the screen, and also a camera is there which capture all these moments. Here the person is drawing and all such things can be done in this. It's a plain wall as a screen. Okay, so let me tell you how does this work. So this works in this principle that the images, pictures, gestures are captured by the camera and it sends for the processing system. In the processing system, by using computer vision technique, and using C++ and C# code, it recognizes these moments and convert it into gestures that can be recognized by the system. And the result is projected in the outer surface, desired surface, and we can see the output. Okay, that's how this works. And let's see some applications. And here that person is zooming, right? He zoom in, and just like in a Google map and all such things, he is just using his fingers to zoom it out to see. And also here we can see that person is clicking pictures just with the gesture of taking photo that we used to do in our childhood, right? When we were kids, we used to make gestures of taking photos, and by using that gestures we can take photos, and actually when we find a screen we can edit that photos, send to other friends, and all such things can be done. And also we can edit this thing, and we can convert our hand to a dialogue without having a phone. We can call someone or text someone. That is also an application. And after that, we in a supermarket, or also we can find the quality of a product just by taking that in with our hands, in with that sensors in our fingers. And also in a library or a bookstore, we can take a book and we can find the rating there. And also we could read audio book will also be available when we take the book directly. And also that are the amazing applications of this technology. And while reading a newspaper, you can see the news there. So it's amazing things, right? And all these things are the applications of this technology if it is implemented. And we can access network anywhere, and we can also have digital clock. Actually the object device is not present, but we can see the time, and all such things can be done with the help of this technology. So let me say that imagination is the only limit for implementing this technology, because whatever you can imagine, you can bring into real life with the help of this technology. So this technology gives a very hope for the future that many drastic changes will come to our everyday life if it is implemented to a common man's life. So let's hope to see it in the future, right? So with this, I conclude. Thank you. Ma'am?
Thank you, Lydia. So as you rightly mentioned, imagination is your limit. And over to you, Anu, for the comments.
No, it's a wonderful presentation, Lydia. It's good that you went into the gesture-based technology, which is I still remember seeing that first video from Pranav Mystery, wherein he was using gestures to do his shopping within a retail chain. And at that time, I couldn't but imagine or wonder, how is this possible at all? So in your presentation, I think you have given a reasonably good explanation about how this might work. And I also want to remember that there was a Kerala startup named Finn, which actually produced a ring, which was using gesture technology to control your equipments. And eventually, that ring was sold as an ornament in Bloomingdale's in one of the Christmas seasons. It didn't take off much, but there was an effort that happened probably 10 years back from a Kerala startup who tried out this technology. But what I would, ask the people listening to this conversation to do is, there is this particular exercise that Dr. Achyut Shankar makes us do when it comes to creativity. So think about, where can you apply this? Think about one or two applications that you could build using gesture technology, or in your real life, where would you put this to use? But I think that's a lot of food for thought that you have put on the table, Lydia. Thank you very much for an excellent presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Lydia. Happy that all technology, once a part of the sci-fi movies, are closing towards our real life. Thank you for that excellent presentation, Lydia. So next we have Vishnu P. Kumar, currently the robotics and community head at Mar Basilius IEDC and part-time software and hardware developer at Helix Humboldt Private Limited. He is currently pursuing his BTech in Electronics and Communication at the Mar Basilius College of Engineering. He secured several prizes in project competitions. He secured. He was a runner-up of Sheep Hackathon. He will be presenting his interest on Internet of Robots of Things.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, my screen is visible, right?
Yes, Vishnu, it is visible.
Okay, miss. Thank you, miss. Okay. So a warm good evening to another person here. Myself, Vishnu P. Kumar. I'm currently doing S5 in Electronics and Communication Engineering at Mar Basilius College of Engineering and Technology, Trivandrum. I'm also a part-time developer at Helix Humboldt Private Limited. It's a startup company. So today I'm going to talk about the Internet of Robotic Things, or IoRT. So it's an emerging technology, and we are having a lot and lots of applications in the present day. So let's see what is Internet of Robotic Things, what are its features, what are the applications, what are the components of IoRT, etc. So what is Internet of Robotic Things, or IoRT? It's better known by the name IoT integrated robotics. So any communication, so we all know that IoT is the communication between two devices via the internet. So when it comes to Internet of Robotic Things, it is the communication between two robots via the internet. So the concepts of IoT are being applied to the robotics to make the robots more and more intelligent. So here we can see our Wally and Eva are talking to each other. So they are actually talking as a physical. They are having a physical conversation. So in the IoRT application, it will be similar to this, but the robots will be communicating the data sets. So they will be communicating about their position, their current state, what they are doing. So these robots will be communicating as data bits. So this is IoRT. So this is the simple definition of IoRT. Then we are having some famous IoRT robots. First one is the Amazon warehouse robot. It's a very common robot. So the Amazon warehouse is a very large area. So we are having millions of products in that warehouse. So it will be very hard for a human being to go to each rack and collect the products. So instead of that, there will be a swarm of robots, IoRT robots. They are connected between each other via the internet. They will be going to each and every racks according to the requirement, and they will be taking up each racks and they will bring to the person who is managing the products. So this is the Amazon warehouse robot. Then they are having a lifting mechanism on their top. This black thing will be taking up the racks from the floor. Then here we have the Tommy, the robot nurse. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen many robotic technologies evolving. So the Tommy robot nurse is such a robot. So we have seen many teleoperated robots working in the this hospital industry. So this robot is having a display on its body. So the doctor will be playing streaming their video from home. They can interact with the patient. The robot will be collecting vitals like blood pressure, the glucose level, then data from the ECG machine, etc. And the robot will send this data to the doctor so that the doctor can prescribe medicines, and he or she can diagnose the patient without physically going to the hospital. Then we are having construction drones, or the UAVs, the unmanned aerial vehicles. So these construction drones will be capturing photos from the top view of the construction that is being made. So it will be comparing these images with the expected outcome. And earlier time, this was done by the engineer by climbing to the crane and then inspecting. So now with the help of IoRT, this has become a very easy task. These are the famous IoRT robots. Then what are the components of IoRT technology? We are having perception, computation, communication, and control. Perception. Perception is the part in which the robot will be collecting data about its surrounding. So like we are having sensors, the robot will be taking sensors from its surrounding using this perception. So we are having different sensors, like we are having RFID, the radio frequency identity. Then we are having different sensors like encoders, temperature sensors, light sensors, force sensors, etc. Then we are having LiDARs. These are light detection and ranging systems. Then we are having barcode readers for locating the products and for navigation. Then we are having two types of computation. One is cloud-based, and we can also do it on-board computation. So when we are doing cloud-based computation, the hardware will be much lower, and the computation power required will be very less when we are doing cloud-based communication or off-board computation. When coming to the on-board computation, the hardware cost will be very much. We'll have to use high-end processors like NVIDIA's Jetson Nano, Jetson Xavier, Jetson other Jetson boards, or other high-end variants. So we can choose depending on the application. Then we are having two types of communication: internet or Wi-Fi. So what is the difference between the two? Internet, when the robots are communicating via the internet, the robots can be controlled anywhere from the world, and one robot at a particular place can communicate with a very distant robot. And when using the Wi-Fi, the robots will be connected to a local network, and they will be communicating based on that local network. Then the control can be manual, can be autonomous, it can be fully autonomous or semi-autonomous, and the control will be the overall performance will be based on intelligence. Then this is the block level diagram showing the IoT components. Then what are the applications? As I said before, we are having many applications in industry. We can the industrial connected robots is a good application. The Amazon warehouse robots are the example. Then in healthcare, we have seen the Tommy robot. Then in construction site, we have seen the UAV drones. So these are the applications. Then I would like to showcase some of the robots made by me. So till now I have made about 80 robots. This was my first robot. This is not the actual one. I have it's a replica. I have recreated the robot for showing to people. So it was basically a cardboard box in which I cut a hole and placed a small watch in it. So it was my first robot. I made it when I was 10 years old. Then this one I made for my school exhibition. Then this one is under construction. I'm planning to make it like a Google Home or Amazon Alexa. Then this is a Santa Claus robot. And then this one is a simple ultrasonic obstacle avoiding robot, and this one is a line follower robot. So these are the robots that I made, some of the robots. Then this one is the first robot that I made using Arduino. So this was named as Clean Bolt, and this R45 shows the number of robot. So this was my 45th robot. It works on the Arduino Uno microcontroller. Then the features are like vacuum cleaning. So here we have the vacuum cleaner. Then mopping is there. So we have two mopping devices here. Then floor wiping is here. It's in the back side. Then drying is also in the back side. And large size waste collecting is there. So it is done by this rotating device. It will be collecting the paper waste and the big waste. So it is going like this. When the robot is moving, large waste will be collected by this. Then remaining will be collected by the vacuum cleaner. Then mopping will be done. Then wiping will be done. And finally, it will be dried. So this was the cleaning robot that I made. Then my first IoT robot is this one. It was made using NodeMCU microcontroller. It is working on the ESP8266 Wi-Fi chipset. So it's a teleoperated robot. It's a very basic IoT robot. So we can control the robot using a mobile application, and it's working on local network. So it's having features like it can shoot. So it's a dummy gun. Then we are having gripping and grabbing option. Then we are having fire extinguishing option, night vision, and this teleoperation are there. And this one is the Topio R60 robot. It is having voice assistance. Then it is having a IFTTT based hardware action. Encoder motor wheels are there. Then movable arm and head are there. So these joints are having servo motors, and this hand and head are also having servo motors. So this robot can move. It can, just like the Google Assistant, it can answer to any questions that we ask. In addition to that, we are also having custom voice recognition for doing hardware actions. So this one is done using Raspberry Pi 3B+. The one which is shown here is Raspberry Pi 4. This one is Taurus R76. It's a robot under work. I'm currently working on this robot. It is based on Jetson Nano microprocessor. So it's a prestigious project for me because I am learning a lot like a robot operating system for doing this robot. I'm also learning automatic indoor navigation for doing this robot. Then I'm planning to include this automatic indoor navigation, follow me mode, and object recognition and tracking mode. And I'll be also incorporating the assistive robot 2 into this system. So this will be mapping the room using a LiDAR, and it will be navigating in the indoors. So this IoT technology is a very easy to learn technology. Everyone can do it just by initially learning about some microcontrollers or microprocessors. Then we can learn IoT projects. Then we can do robotics projects, and finally we can merge them or combine them to do IoT projects. So that's my presentation. Thank you so much for giving me such a wonderful opportunity. Thank you all, and have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishnu. Probably, Vishnu, soon you will enter into the Limca World Records for building maximum number of robots. Okay, over to Anu for comments.
Thank you, Vishnu. I think in a world of people say that in a world of thinkers and doers, the number of thinkers are increasing and the number of doers are decreasing. But you definitely looks like a doer starting to build your first robot when you were 10. But let me ask you this question: how did you end up or started building robots? What was your inspiration to?
Sir, it was that Endiran movie by Shankar. Exactly, okay. That one was what was my inspiration.
That is, a lot of these technologies has been, the future is largely envisioned by the movies and the Netflix series and things like that. Yes, I was looking at, and I also have this I was looking at the Kiva robot that you displayed, which later got acquired by Amazon. I have a personal connection there because, after we sold our first startup, the entire team actually moved to Kiva. And I had an offer from, Kiva to go and work for them, which I declined. But that's a product that I hold very close to my heart. I also, want to bring about the story of Gen Robotics, a company that has ended up doing manhole cleaning. So manual scavenging is being taken away by the robot that they have built. So what I have understood is in the world of robotics, I mean, I have interacted with 3 or 4 companies in the past, and in the world of robotics, what I understood is finding out the right kind of use case for your robot, right? Otherwise, you will keep on building the robots, but you will not be able to commercially scale it into a company. But Vishnu, I see great possibilities for you to, if you can identify one use case around you that you can solve, and that could be as simple as replacing the vacuum cleaner. I know that there are robots that are already available in the Indian market, which kind of takes care of it very well. But I'm sure there are 100,000 such routine activities, one of which you can pick up, and then you could possibly, turn it around into a world-class commercial organization. And who knows, one day we might have a Boston Dynamics coming out of Kerala, and that's what we would all hope for. But it's wonderful pieces of work that you have displayed today, and I'm always inspired by seeing the doers, and thank you for displaying your work, and good luck with your future.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
And you can be in touch, Vishnu, if you have any questions, or do you need any introductions into the startup mission or things like that. I know that I think you have reached out to me on LinkedIn.
Yes,
We
yes.
will try there, and then we will take it from there.
Yes, sir. I have sent a connection request to you.
I will. We will catch up. We'll connect on LinkedIn, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
That was a great offer, Anu. But thank you for motivating Vishnu. Vishnu was indeed talking a lot about you. Hope that Vishnu, you got connected with a great mentor, and please do promote our platform to your friends. Okay. Next on list is Jasna Joseph, a graduate student at London South Bank University, UK. She's a passionate learner in the field of AI and data science. She secured state first rank in the course of AI and machine learning conducted by ASAP and Indian Institute of Technology. She has completed more than 15 certifications from various online training courses, which include Coursera, edX, Udacity, etc. Today, she will be presenting her views on data science. Jasna, over to you, Jasna. Jasna?
Yes, Miss, can you hear me?
Yes, now you're audible. You can start your presentation.
Okay, Miss. So it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you all. Thank you Trivandrum GSI chapter for inviting me. It's my great pleasure to be here. So I am Jasna Joseph. I am from London South Bank University, currently pursuing my MSc in data science. And I completed my graduation from College of Engineering, Perumal. And I started my AI and data science journey from College of Engineering, Perumal. Like I have enrolled for the ASAP, Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning course from IIT Madras, and I have completed that certification. So I have been to this. I'm a key learner, and I have been to for a few years. And within my limited knowledge, I would like to present my views and some takeaways from the field of data science. And it's my pleasure that I am here in the presence of our beloved head of department, our Bijoy sir, and it's my pleasure that I'm presenting a session in front of him. That's my blessing. So here we go. So data science. So data science is a topic which include lot of areas like analysis, algorithms, data visualization, communication of findings, and everything. So within this few minutes, I'm just going to give an introduction, like an insight on the topic, this data science. So Satya Nadella, the Microsoft CEO, has told like everything is going to be connected in cloud and data, and all of this will be mediated by software. That is absolutely true when it comes to this 21st century. We are connected by Google, and Google is a big data giant. We are using Google Cloud, like Gmails and Drive, Photos, Google Docs, Google Excel, everything we are using. So in this world of data, so like everything is controlled by data. So data is a kind of new oil to the industry. So what I am trying to do with this 8 minutes is like I will give you a quick introduction to the session, and we'll give you what is data science, and we'll explain you some of the takeaways, that the key takeaways, what resources that can be used for learning data science, and I will also explain how this data scientists are doing in a company, like in a real life scenario. What all these data scientists are doing, like they are getting a huge pay, they are in high demand, and what are they doing in a company or in a real life scenario. So that's it for the session. So we are going to start. So as I have already mentioned, data science is an interdisciplinary field. Okay, it's not it's not something a single one. It's an interdisciplinary field where we use scientific methods, processes, algorithms, systems, structured data, unstructured data for finding some kind of knowledge or some kind of insights in order to make the data into information. That is the thing that we're doing with data science. So I think most of us are familiar with this data science process. That is, for a data science process, we need data, that is a collection, and we need to clean that data, transformation, everything will happen in that step, and we will find out some findings, that is the exploratory data analysis, and we will build some models using some algorithms which are in the field of machine learning, and finally we will deploy that model for a particular course. So that is the data science process. I'm not going to explain it in a whole, like I'm not going to make it complex. So I think this process is simple enough to, you can just look at that flow, like collecting to deployment for a particular course. So we will explain it later. So we can explain when we use examples, it will be more familiar, right? So you can see we are using this data science in our day-to-day life, okay, and it has become a part of our life. Like you can see when you look at into the Amazon e-commerce website, you will get that product recommendation in Facebook or Instagram, or you can get some kind of recommendation for music recommendation in Spotify or Ghana, that the app we are using, and also in banks, in improving search optimizations, algorithms, everything, everywhere we use the computer screen or a system, the data science algorithms are running in behind. That is the thing that without our notice, we are a part of data science process. So just a use case to explain, like you can see the bank finance sector. The bank sector is using lot of data science applications. Like you can see in the slide, it is used for real-time predictive analysis, fraud detection, customer data, risk modeling, customer lifetime, all this, you can read it in the slide, right? There are a lot of, in the simple in the banking sector, you can see number of applications which data science is employed. So I will be just showing like a code, some code snippets. Like I have done this, you can see in the screen. So this is a data, okay. So every people, when they talk about professor about data science, they seems to speak about all those theoretical, but I just want to show the practical approach. This is a loan data. That means you can see this is a way you can see when people, those who are outside this industry, when they look at it like a kind of words separated by the commas, right? So this is a data where we have thousands of entries, so it's a big data. We have like kind of large volume of data is here, and this is the data which a data scientist get when he starts her journey to complete a project. So this is the environment of Jupyter Notebook, Anaconda. So when we implement some codes using Python, all this data will be, you can see, just a look at this, nothing like more complicated. You can see how this data, which was separated by commas and like messy data, changes to number of columns. We can identify the number of columns in that. We can identify the information on data. This is how that I just wanted to tell you, like, this is how that happens in the real world. The data will be collected as this, okay, as you can see in the screen, and lot of instances, lot of columns, and millions of data. And from this data, we are making it into a format where we can exploit, we can extract the maximum knowledge and insight from that data. So that is the thing that a data scientist is doing. So nothing more than that. So I will just show you some of the visualization I have done. This is I have done this project. So this is the thing. We can, instead of looking on the data which is separated by commas and this, we can visualize the data. So this is the visualization which shows the loan status of all borrowers. That means how many of them have completed their loans, how many of them are due dates coming. All this is simple. Like, we can employment status of the borrowers. So this is what happens in the industry. When we get a bank, in an international bank where they have millions of customers, they can use this visualization techniques. They can analyze this. So that is the thing, analyze the data. So that they are doing with lot of softwares and all. So we will again go to the slide. So I think that data science in banking sector is much clear. There are a lot of use cases you can see. It can be used in e-commerce, it can be used in manufacturing, it can be used extensively in healthcare, in bioinformatics, and everything, everywhere where there is a problem, data science will come up and it will collect all data and it will find some insights from the data. That is the thing that's happening with all industries, like finance, already mentioned, banking, transport, manufacturing, everything. Okay. So those people, those who are into this industry, need some kind of soft skills and hard skills. As you can see, this is I think every field needs this, like communication, problem solving, mindset, business mindset, teamwork, statistics, and everything. So this is just, there are different soft skills and hard skill which a data scientist needed. Okay. So when it comes to the programming side, I can't explain data science without this programming. Extensively, it is used, Python is used extensively. So not going into the deep, but just quoting some of the main heroes of the data science, because they are the heroes, like NumPy, Pandas, Matplotlib. All these are some packages, some libraries in Python. Okay, so this is employed as I showed you the data set in the loan data, right? That thing can be transformed to a table format, in a format which is readable, which is manipulated, which can be some insights can be explorated, and that is done with the help of this Python libraries. They are really important in the life of a data scientist. Yeah. So when we look at in the analytics of the world, in developed countries, in US, UK, and New Zealand, Australia, or even in India, data scientists are getting a huge pay. They are getting a huge pay. You can look at this figure, right? It's like $1,90,000 per year, that average data scientist salary. So that's the average salary. Then you can think about the experienced one. So the thing is that they are in huge demand. Why and what they're doing in a company? So that I will tell you right now. So I will explain you in just 8 steps what a data scientist is doing in a company, and why he is getting a lot of recognition and a lot of demand in a company or in a real life situation. So whenever a company company arises, we need to solve a business problem, right? So data scientists will brainstorm on like why that happens, how can be this solved, and how can this data from customers or data or older data can be employed to the new instances, and how this predictions can happen. That means the brainstorming happens first, and then we need some kind of data. So this data is driven from web servers, log, database, APIs, online repository. Even I think example, like even the CSI can use the data of the people, those who joined the Google Meet, to analyze their webinar participation of students, or analyze the webinar participation and acceptance of people, like simple as that. So they will acquire the data from particular sources according to the problem, and we will go for the data preparation. So data preparation, in the sense, we need to delete some kind of columns which are not really relevant, and we need to transform the kind of values. Maybe we have to make it into integer values or float or anything like that. So kind of data cleaning and transformation is done. So what we have done, we have identified a business problem, we have collected the data, and now the data preparation will go on. And then we will analyze in the sense, and we will go into the kind of refining and defining all the features, and how can this be benefited in this side. So kind of analytical thinking and critical thinking we will employ in that. And then we will come to the machine learning algorithm. So machine learning algorithm, there are a lot of algorithms differently specifically designed for structured data, unstructured data, and even for reinforcement learning. So we have a lot of algorithms in that, and you can give that algorithms into this data, into this exploratory analysis done data, and you can apply that model, and we can find how best that model is performing and how efficient that model is giving on accuracy and all. So I think you can see in the slide, we are using Python, SAS, and R programming for that. So after that, we came to know that, okay, so this is the findings, and we need to communicate. Maybe if I have got a project and I have to communicate my findings to my CEO, I will be using some kind of visualization techniques. Even data visualization engineer are getting a lot of demand in the job market, because the data's findings have to be communicated, right? So we have to communicate, and for that communication, the thing is that a few years back we were using some kind of reports, plain reports with a lot of words, but right now we are decreasing the number of words and increasing the number of figures and increasing number of images. And that figures, we are not drawing with our hands, or we are not drawing with the paint. We are giving the data, and the figure will be produced in seconds with the data, with correct captions and labels and everything. So that kind of facilitations has been happened with kind of softwares called Tableau, Power BI, ClickView, etc. So, and after that, we have done with the communication and visualization and all, we will be particularly giving that our findings to a particular problem, and we will deploy that model to the real life scenario, and we will maintain it. So that is a thing that a data scientist is doing. So when we take an example of everywhere, any real-time prediction or real-time companies or any big data chains, they're using the same process. So simple as that, collecting data, what all the stuff that I have mentioned. So this is the daily routine of a data scientist. So it's a kind of lot of fun. We will get screwed up. We will get a lot of interesting accepts, and we will also get a lot of challenges while doing all this process. So one of the key takeaways that I have to give you is like some of the resources where you can start your data science journey. Maybe it's maybe as a student, I can just a takeaway, just a quick takeaway for students out there, those who really wanted to start the career in data science, you can go to Kaggle. Kaggle is an online repository. It's a free repository. That means it's a database where you can get lot of data, okay? And in that you will get lot of courses also. So the courses, in the sense, they have a practical approach and of course the theoretical approach. So personal recommendation from my side, let's just from my side, like, you can use Kaggle for doing some minute courses. There are a lot of courses in that, okay? You can just go through it and you will get hands-on experience, and they're simple and in a very standard manner. And also you can go with Udacity. In Udacity, there are a lot of free courses, and they are specially designed in a manner that every beginner can learn. And also there are nano degrees, okay? Nano degrees. I have completed nano degree of data analyst, and you can choose according to your need. And nano degrees will provide you with 7 projects and all. So it is like kind of learning. It's a really good learning, international learning. It's really good. So that is a 2 recommendation from my side. It's like Kaggle, and you can go with Udacity. So when you look at it in the company level, like a company level entry, or people those are really into the opening to a job in data science, I recommend you that you learn one of the tool, okay? If you're really good at Tableau, go for it. If you're really good at Spark or SQL or SQL, like in Python programming, okay, or any other softwares like Google Analytics or MongoDB or anything. So I can't explain you all the things. Like, if you're really good at data science and you wanted to open up a job for you, stick on 1 or 2 tools, and in that tools be a master. And you can go for Amazon AWS data science platform is there, Google GCP platform is there, and Microsoft Power BI, everything is there. So rather than going broadly into the topic, just go to some kind of tools and start your journey there. That's a simple advice that I'm not a person, those who can give advice, but still I just wanted to say you that. So that's it. So within this time, I was only able to tell this much. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you so much. Thank you so much, CSI Trivandrum chapter and BGMS for all our guidance and all. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessna, for taking us through a visual treat of the life of a data scientist. Over to Anu Pambika.
Thank you, Jessna. That was a wonderful presentation wherein you gave a gist of what is data science to probably the aspiring students or aspiring data scientists out of the students who are attending this course. I'll definitely agree with a couple of points that you made. As one, it is one of the most sought after skill set probably for the next 10 to 20 years, because as everybody is saying, data is the new oil. So anything related to data, that will start from acquiring data from sources, cleaning it up, building models on top of it, making predictions, visualizing, doing actions based on the predictions that you have made. All those is of high demand. It's going to be a huge opportunity for people. For people who are
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. And people who are venturing into data science, I would say Udacity would be a good first step, wherein you will get the basics of data science. But what I usually tell people is, before even going to Kaggle or any of that stuff, I think you should try out the smaller problems, wherein, can I build a small prediction model for multiplication, or for a linear equation or something like that, which will give you the basics in Python, the basics in model building, the basics in creation of data, and things like that. Once you start seeing your first prediction model to work, you will get more enthusiastic and you will get on to more complex things, like how Yentiran inspired Vishnu to build his first robot. I think that there needs to be something working which will inspire you to take it forward. But it is a great opportunity, and Jasna kind of covered the entire gambit of data science, and best of luck to you, Jasna. I think you are doing a wonderful job, and everybody out there who's wanting to make a career in data science, I think it's going to be a great opportunity for people.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jasna. You are indeed our first international participation. In spite of the time difference, you managed to be there with us. Thank you so much, Jasna.
Thank you, miss. Thank you, miss. It's all right.
The final one in the list is Varsha, a technology enthusiast and currently an undergraduate student at the UK College of Engineering. She is an active member of IEEE and CSI and has deep passion in new technology. She will be presenting her thought on blockchain and cryptocurrency. Varsha, over to you.
Okay. Miss, is it visible?
Yes, Varsha. Just
A very good evening to all respected judges, ladies and gentlemen. I am Varsha and I am here to deliver a talk on the topic blockchain technology and cryptocurrency. Are you interested in explore new technologies? Yes, I am. When I say about technology, I remember the famous words of Alvin Toffler. That is a great growing engine of change. Technology. So the world is in much need of new technologies. So come to blockchain. This is not a new concept, but its potential is enormous. Simply, blockchain is a better, safer way to record activity and keep the data. According to surveys, large enterprises thinking of a way to implement blockchain in their project. Do they really need a blockchain? Let's see what is the purpose in various industries. So, here you may have noticed about the recent news reports of implementing blockchain in various fields like medical field, and here you can see some reports related to cryptocurrency which are enabled by blockchain. So your question should be like this: what is the need of blockchain in the society? You know, cyber crimes are increasing day by day. It's grown multifold in the past few years. The hacking over a billion of Yahoo accounts and increase in random sum damages are just a few incidents. And then the rise of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. And if you look at the reason why Bitcoin was created, there's a one word that you can describe it better than anything else is trust. Bitcoin was created to overcome the mistrust and non-transparency of financial institutions. So you know, decentralization and transparency are the main features of this technology because they help the transaction to work as efficient and secure. So, what is the process behind this technology? Let's have a look. If some sender needs to send some data, the transactions are represented as block, and this block is broadcast to the network, and those in the network approve the transaction valid or not after they are added to chain, and thereby data moves from the sender to receiver. Okay. Do you know 5 lakhs people die annually in India due to the lack of an organ donor? It's really shocking for me. Along with other reasons, fraud things have happened here. So, here we introduce blockchain as a solution to this, which result in fraud prevention in organ donation through the transparency in the system. The process of organ donation need to be efficient and secure and trackable and immutable. They can be only be achieved if blockchain technology carefully used for the process. Okay, how this process done? This process is like the contract signed by the organ donors and the patient need the organs are reached to the doctor, and the medical report, smart contract and the mastered payer and verified by the doctor, and they are broadcasted to the network, and the matched payer and then again sent to the doctor for approval, and after the verified match stored on the blockchain. Using the blockchain technology in organ donation, the matching process increases the chances of promptly finding an appropriate match while being completely secure. So, you know there are many applications for blockchain in various industries, right? Let's have a look on it. So, In the healthcare industry, we have BuzzIQ, which means it's a big data blockchain contract help patients and doctors to securely transfer sensitive medical information. The smart contract establishes the parameters of what data can be shared and even display details of personal health plans for each patient. So media chain is something interesting means it is used in the music industry. So media chain use smart contract to get musicians the money they deserve. So, many corruptions are here there in the real estate industry. So, Propi, which is a solution for this, it's a global real estate marketplace with a decentralized title registry system. The online marketplace uses blockchain to make title issuers instantaneous and even offers properties that can be purchased using cryptocurrency. And Opskins, which is used in gaming industry, and IoT, Internet of Things. We all are familiar with this. The IoT is the next logical bloom in blockchain application. IoT have millions of applications and many safety concerns, and an increasing IoT products means better chances of hackers to steal your data. Blockchain infused IoT adds a higher level of security to prevent data breaches by utilizing the transparency and virtual incorruptibility of the technology to keep the things smart. So, then how this cryptocurrency use and how this is connected to blockchain technology? Blockchain is a technology that enables the existence of cryptocurrency. What's a cryptocurrency? Simply, a cryptocurrency means it's a medium of exchange, such as say like a US dollar, but it is digital and uses encryption technique to control the creation of monetary unit and to verify the transfer of funds. There are currently over 2000 cryptocurrencies and counting. While this indicates that more people are using crypto to solve everyday problems. Some of the features of cryptocurrencies are like it eliminates the central party and they are virtual, immutable. Okay, one thing to keep in mind is the fact that cryptocurrency is a Ponzi or to get rich quicker scheme. It's a transparent scheme that can be created to revolutionize the financial system. So, before you stamp any coin as a cryptocurrency, step back and ask yourself if it possesses all the features. So, cryptocurrency mining, which include two functions, which means adding the transactions to the blockchain and realizing new currency individuals blocks added to the miner should be within the proof of work. So with these features, why India doesn't trust cryptocurrency, which means our Reserve Bank is concerned about the investors' protection and the anonymity of the transaction and lack of intrinsic value of the cryptocurrency. So, concluding the whole topic, the new technological advancements are like a glamours can change our everyday lives. Like any new technology, the blockchain is an idea that initially disrupt and over time it should promote the development of larger ecosystem that include both the old way and the new innovation. Thank you all. Thank you CSI for giving this opportunity to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Varsha. That was indeed an excellent use case which you have explained. Great to see that smart algorithms are there to support the organ donation campaign. Over to you, Anu.
Thank you, Varsha. I think it was indeed a great presentation, and good that you talked about a specific use case, because people have been talking about blockchain for a long time, and the only thing that has come out in the open that we have seen, publicly is the cryptocurrencies as of yet, which has a lot of legal hassles, like you rightly pointed out in India. But I guess tracking the vaccinations, tracking the organ donations, tracking the certificates. There's quite a bit of an opportunity that is available in employing blockchain as a technology. There are countries which has made great advances like Dubai and Estonia and places like that, where they have completely transitioned into blockchain for governmental transactions. But I guess India is still pretty much a long way to go. People who are interested in blockchain, I would like to also mention that there is something called an accelerated blockchain academy or something like that, that is run by the Kerala Digital University, which gives you a 3-month course or something in blockchain, which will give you the basics of blockchain and some of the packages that people might be interested in. Biji, that is all the comments that I have, but I would like to also add on one thing. I was particularly impressed by the communication skills, the confidence that was shown by everybody during their presentations. It's not very easy. Kerala is a place where, if you have 50 people and you ask someone to speak up, no one would utter a word. I've had crowds as big as 100 people sitting in front of me, and when asked pointed questions, nobody would utter a word. And it's indeed a great pleasure to see students coming out and communicating and presenting the concepts so well, like professionals. And that is a welcome change that organizations like CSI could bring on to the academic community. Thank you, Biji, for taking that effort, and thank you, Achut sir, for the leadership, taking the leadership in this entire effort.
Thank you, Anu. So you well said. This is indeed a small initiative from CSI Trivandrum chapter to encourage young minds to communicate effectively. Within a short span of time, how effectively you can introduce the topic. That was the whole side. Great that our speakers for the first time was able to maintain the time in the correct order, as Anup mentioned. Thank you all for your efforts. On behalf of CSI Trivandrum chapter, I thank each one of you for your presence. Anup, a special thanks for you for encouraging our young minds and giving them all valuable comments. Thank you once again all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.